such as
泰
that
坦
of
尼
the
克号
six.
上面有中国乘客。
Six of them survived.
Titanic, it is a Chinese story. They were kind of shuffled off and hidden, you know, kind of expunged from the records and so on.
In order to remember the people who saved and survived the tragic sinking of the Titanic, every survivor's lives were well documented, but not the Chinese passengers. Their story had been buried like the ship for more than 100 years until now. The untold story of the Chinese passengers aboard the Titanic opened in cinemas across China on April 16th. The lead researcher of the Six, Stephen Schwankert, is with us today. The movie is based on his idea. Hello, Mr. Schwankert.
Hi, Miranda. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. How did you come up with the idea of making this documentary?
Yeah, there's so much information about almost every other passenger on board Titanic, but the Chinese were uniquely unknown. And I just thought that was strange. I thought it's not possible that these men didn't go on and have families and didn't tell the families that story. I just thought there's got to be a great story there. So let's see what we can find out, and let's see how many of the six that we can actually find. The whole process took about 5 or 6 years. We started out very slowly because we just didn't have a lot of information. Working with the names that we had was very difficult because we only had anglicized names of the men. We didn't have their Chinese names. So it took us a while to first find Chinese names, and then once we had that allowed us to find a lot more.
Why do you think it's necessary for people to know that the scene about the Chinese guy who was saved had been deleted from the Titanic film?
I want people to know that it wasn't a conscious decision on James Cameron's part. He didn't delete the Chinese from the film historically. It's just too similar to the Jack and Rose ending. So it's a creative decision. I think we can all understand that. We all like the final ending. But I think it was also important for people to understand that that had a very real historical basis, and that historical basis was the rescue of a Chinese man from the water, and that he may have been the last passenger rescued from Titanic.
Why do you think the story of the Chinese passengers have been buried for such a long time?
That's a good question. I think at first, if you read all the historical accounts from the time, the view of them was very negative. So they were not glamorous passengers, they weren't first-class passengers, wealthy passengers. And I think also, if they had any awareness of what had been written about them, they would not have wanted to share that story publicly. And clearly they didn't. They were even very hesitant to share it with their own family. So there was so little information about them, for other researchers, that will be very difficult.
What is the most important message you wanted to deliver to the world by the Six?
I think it shows their spirit that they never gave up. They were involved in a great shipwreck, and they survived, and they just kept going. They faced discrimination and racism and, anti-Chinese immigration policies, and they just kept going.
The Six is catching the world's attention right now. Why do you think this is?
I think it's a fresh perspective on a story that everybody thinks they already know. But the surprise that people express when they find out there were Chinese passengers on board and that there were 6 survivors, and then really their tale of survival, not just on Titanic, but that lifelong survival and their perseverance.
People are saying that your film will change some people's stereotypes on the Chinese people. What do you think?
I hope that will be true. But I think if the film shows anything, it's that these problems that we're facing with discrimination and especially in the U.S. lately with anti-Asian hate, these are old problems. They're not new problems. These are problems we've been dealing with for more than 100 years. And so probably the solutions are not going to come too quickly. I hope people will see that through perseverance, success is possible, and I hope that the same thing is true with the problems that we're talking about.